About 3 months after my endo excision surgery, I started noticing something weird. 3 months is when my endosurgeon had said, recovery is over, you're healed. This thing I noticed, it wasn't a complication. It wasn't a weird new thing that my body was doing. In fact, my body was pretty much exactly the same, aside from 5 tiny little incision scars on my stomach and, 1 less fallopian tube. I wasn't having severe period pain, but otherwise, my body was exactly the same as it had been before surgery. And that was the problem. My body looked the same. Lurking somewhere underneath all of my ideas about my health and my period pain and my endometriosis was this sneaky little thought that once whatever is wrong with me finally gets fixed, I'll be skinny. Once I'm healthy, I'll be skinnier than I was when I was sick. Not a conscious thought, not a thing I actually think, but it was in my head. It was affecting how I felt about my body without me even being aware of this thought. So where did this sneaky little thought come from? Who put it there? And how do I come to terms with the fact that me at my healthiest might not be me at my thinnest?
What's happening to your body, we don't know, because we've never really studied the female body. Say it's all in my head, but the research is quite spotty. No, we've never really studied the female body. I go to the doctor to get dismissed. Try losing weight, you're just anxious. That's fine, that's cool, I'm not pissed. Just wait 10 years for a diagnosis. Psychosomatic, you're so dramatic. Hysterical, emotional, hormonal, erratic. Heart disease, chronic fatigue, depression and anxiety. Do you have pain? No, you don't, because we've never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to CRAMPED, the podcast where I try to find answers to my and other people's questions about their period pain. I'm your host, Kate Helen Downey. I hope that listening to this podcast feels like meeting up with me at a local bar. And sometimes I bring friends that are experts in things, and we all talk about stuff together. So then think of the CRAMPED Patreon as a way to buy me a very cheap drink once a month while we're sitting at that bar. Think of the last time you bought a round for a group of friends at happy hour, and ask yourself, is Kate bringing as much value to my life as any of those friends? I know paying for a podcast seems insane. We're all very used to getting podcasts for free, me included. But I am not the New York Times. I am not an Amazon-owned audio company. It's just me, with a uterus and a microphone and a lot of tricks I've learned to get past paywalls on published clinical studies. I've been publishing the show for a year and a half now, and I know I've helped a lot of you because you have reached out to tell me how much this show has helped. I've heard from people who have canceled ablation surgeries after listening to my episodes. I've heard from people who have learned for the first time that they are not alone in this pain and this problem they're having. I've heard from people who have picked up strategies for dealing with their period pain on this podcast that mean they can survive their life better while they search for a diagnosis and a treatment. I know money is tight right now, but if you wouldn't miss $5 a month, $10 a month, $25 a month, that money buys more of my time that I can spend on this. So if you think this is a valuable podcast and you don't want to see this disappear, go to patreon.com/cramped. Thank you. And just a quick reminder, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I am just a research nerd with a uterus and a microphone sharing what I found. And today, what I found is 2 experts to help me untangle this very fraught question. Why did I think I would be skinnier once my period pain had been treated? I have always been average-sized. Sometimes on the slim side. I'm short, so I get called petite. Aside from some low FODMAP and anti-inflammatory diets in the year between getting diagnosed with endo and then getting surgery, I haven't dieted at all. I've never dieted to lose weight. I don't often have doctors tell me that I need to lose weight. Not never, because U.S. healthcare, but not often. But I was a preteen and a teenager in the early 2000s. You know, when Jessica Simpson was getting called fat on the cover of tabloids with her high-waisted jeans. I don't think any of us escaped unscathed from that era when it comes to body image. Even though I know my weight is healthy, and I eat nutritious foods, and I move my body, even though I have worked hard to deprogram the brainwashing and erase the voice that says, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, I still often spiral into unkind thoughts about how my body looks. I'll see an unflattering photo that someone took when I was having a genuinely great time, and that photo ruins my day. I'll look at my belly or my cellulite in the mirror and I'll think dark thoughts about what my belly says about me or what people think when they look at me. I have been so lucky and I've worked hard to surround myself with female friends who never talk shit about our bodies. I have followed creators of all sizes on Instagram to see incredible outfits and makeup and hair and attitude and activities so that I never fall into the trap of only seeing thin bodies do cool things around me. Basically, I've worked really hard to not let these thoughts get in. So it was kind of a shock to realize that despite all this work, I had this expectation that after surgery and after recovery, I would just automatically be skinnier. I was expecting to have a flat stomach now that the blocked and dilated fallopian tube that had been causing all my pain was finally gone. So where did this subconscious belief come from? How did it get so deep in my head without me even knowing? Is it possible to exist in our culture and somehow not get sucked into this vortex of unreasonable expectations of our bodies? Where do our ideas about what healthy bodies look like actually come from? I had so many questions about this intersection of medicine, culture, and body image. I realized I needed a couple different perspectives here. So I went and found two very different experts. First, I found Nancy N. Chen, a medical anthropologist, a professor at UC Santa Cruz, and author of the book Food, Medicine, and Quest for Good Health. I found her from a TED Talk she did in 2021 titled The Inaccurate Link Between Body Ideals and Health.
Hello and welcome. Body ideals reflect social meanings about how we dwell in spaces, both physical and cultural.
Okay, perfect. I was pretty sure she would have some light to shed on the questions I had. But first, I had to clear something up for myself.
What is a medical anthropologist?
I remember when I was in graduate school having to explain that to my parents because they're like, okay, you're not a medical doctor, but you're studying medicine. Medical anthropologists are researchers who are trained in anthropology to understand how medicine and beliefs about the body and bodily practices are really at the intersection of culture and knowledge and medicine itself. So we really try to think about medicine as a cultural system of knowledge rather than thinking of it as separate, that it's deeply embedded in the cultural practices throughout history.
In order to answer my questions about this topic, I felt like I really needed someone who had more lived experience existing on social media and talking and thinking about body image in a very modern context. Luckily, I had already been following someone on Instagram for years who had been educating me so much about body image and visibility.
I'm Sarah Simpson. I'm a body image coach. I had a lot of my own struggles with self-worth, with body image. I struggled with eating disorders for years, and I basically made myself what society would tell me is perfect in my body, in my health habits. I was the quote-unquote healthy friend that my friends would tell me that they looked up to, and I just knew that I was miserable inside. And so I started digging into why I was so unfulfilled by being this patriarchal societal image of a perfect woman, a perfect young girl, really. You know, I found this wealth of information about how society basically lies to us about who we should be and how we should look and what it takes for us to be happy. So the work that I do now is for the woman who feels like her body is holding her back. I have clients as young as like 13, 14, as old as like late 60s. We all just want to feel like we're good enough. And we've been told for years that the reason we're not good enough is what our body looks like or how our body is. So that's what I do.
And true to form for a body image coach who is very present on Instagram, when I interviewed her, she called in from the side of a pool at a gorgeous hotel in Turkey where she is digital nomading from for a couple weeks. I am jealous, yes. Now that I have these two people with different but overlapping areas of expertise, I'm going to ask my questions to both of them. Professor Nancy Chen is going to take this one first.
Somewhere deep in the back of my mind that I wasn't even aware of, why did I think once I was healthy, once I had surgery, I was suddenly going to just automatically be skinnier? Where did this subconscious belief of mine come from?
It's a complex answer because in many ways we are trained in this society and within biomedicine to think of ourselves and our bodies as a singular entity. when in fact, what we learn in medical anthropology is that, first of all, of course, we're deeply social beings. Our surroundings, our environment really impact us. And then more importantly is that the individual body is really not just a actual living entity, but it's also in communication and relationship with other bodies, with our environment, with our lived history. And for instance, the concept of epigenetics, which came up over the past decade, has been very profound because it teaches us that it's not just our genetic makeup, but also the environment around us that really makes a difference. I would say that it's not just one subconscious belief, but it's important to realize that our belief systems are deeply shaped by our peers, by what we read, what we view, what we hear, just, certain values that get imparted over the generations. So this is something that is in our heads, but it's also around us in every possible way.
Yeah, we're kind of swimming in the soup of all these cultural expectations.
Absolutely.
And now, same question for Sarah Simpson, body image coach. Where did this subconscious belief come from? Like, how did it get so deep in my head that despite all the work that I've done to eradicate and pull out by the roots the patriarchal body image requirements, like, how did that stay so deep in there?
Number one, we tie body size and shape directly to health, which we tie directly to moral standing. So it's basically, if you're not thin, it's a bad thing and you're unhealthy. That's what that sounds like. And that's like the typical dialogue, right? And so what that causes, whether you're having a belly because of endometriosis or because that's just what your body looks like, or whatever all these reasons society tries to tell us is the problem, or any other body part that you deem unworthy or unacceptable, and there must be an explanation, it teaches us to always look for an explanation. If it's this health moralism, that implies that there is a solution, right? That's how we approach health. It's like, you have an infection, take antibiotics. If you have a flu, take the cough medicine. I don't know, whatever it is. We always look at it as like a cause and effect. And I will give you another example outside of endometriosis. I also have a not flat stomach, and I am a bigger size now than I used to be. And I've had a not flat stomach at every size. And again, I used to work out twice a day, eat absolutely nothing, do all of the things that society would clap their hands at me for, and I still didn't have a flat stomach. I've been asked if I'm pregnant 6 times in the last, less than 3 years, and at a lot of different sizes.
Yeah.
And whenever I talk about it on social media, it's not the fact that it happens. It's the fact that when I talk about it, if you look at my comment sections, they are always, oh, no, you don't look pregnant, but you look like you have fibroids, and you look like you have endo, and you have endo belly, babe. You look like you have a hormonal imbalance. You look like you're lactose intolerant. You look like you're gluten intolerant. You look like you're fat and you're eating too much. Like, it's always looking for an explanation.
For the cause, yeah.
For a cause.
To diagnose you, basically.
Yes. Number one, there's not a problem to solve. We don't have to look at everything that isn't flat and smooth and perfect as a moral failing, but also sometimes the quote unquote cause is that's just what your body looks like.
Right.
And capitalism and patriarchy, they have demonized the belly because keeping it flat is unsustainable and impossible for most people. And so, number one, you're looking for a cause for why your body looked that way. So you're feeling disappointed when the thing that you thought was causing it, you fixed that thing and it didn't fix it. And number two, we're taught that no matter what we look like or how small we get, because the belly always fluctuates, you're still going to be dissatisfied because you're going to have a full stomach or you're going to have bloating for whatever reason, and your belly's not going to be flat anymore. And that's intentional as well. We can never feel completely at rest. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. My focus had been so much on getting a diagnosis for so much of my life. It was 22 years of searching for a reason that I was in severe pain once a month, that I put the diagnosis on a pedestal, where it was like, if I can just get a diagnosis, if I can just figure out the answer, what's wrong with me, it'll fix everything else that I'm unhappy with about my body. Yeah. It not only will I not be in pain anymore, but I hung everything that I was unhappy about with my body on that problem. And then when actually getting the diagnosis and getting the surgery, fixed a lot of things, fixed a lot of problems, was successful, but there were a lot of things I hung on there that were not accurate to hang on that diagnosis and that treatment. Okay, 2 different answers, one from an academic and historical perspective, and one from a focus on our modern context. But they have a surprising amount in common. Okay, next question.
So what culturally do we actually mean when we say healthy?
Health itself is a construction and a reflection of social norms and cultural values. The question of not only what is healthy, but perhaps more specifically, what is good health, is something that changes over time. Our bodies change. Think about it. Your body as an infant, your body as a child, as an adolescent, as a young adult, as an aging person through the decades, and then as an elderly person. All of these notions of what is good health shift over time. Health is a very dynamic, constant process of evolving and transformation. At the same time, it's possible to think about health in terms of not just one's exterior appearances. It's also important to think about health from internal measures. You might get your blood pressure taken, you might have your body temperature taken. Another standard is to listen to the heartbeat. And so these are ways to remind us that health is not just about the external appearance, it's also the internal functioning of our organs, of our vascular system, these very dynamic systems within our bodies. And from a cultural standpoint, a lot of different medical systems from across different cultures focus more on the interior rather than the exterior.
Can you talk more about that? What does it mean to focus more on the interior than the exterior? What is another system of medicine that isn't as focused on the external?
I'm going to bring up 3 different classical systems of medicine. So, for instance, if you look at Chinese medicine, which in this country is referred to as TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, there's a notion that it's not so much the exterior that we pay attention. Of course, Chinese medical doctors will look at and observe, for instance, and do tongue diagnosis. They'll ask you to stick out your tongue, and they will read your pulse with their fingers instead of with a stethoscope. And there's this notion that the internal organs are really important entities to pay attention to, such that when I ask my students, when you point to yourself, where do you point to? They'll point to their heart. Sometimes they'll point to their gut. It's often the center of the body, which is the heart. Whereas in Chinese medicine, the most important organ is actually the kidneys, because the kidneys are really the source of life, that this is where the notion of energy comes from, that, qi is generated through the kidneys. Your classical system of medicine is actually Ayurveda. Ayurvedic medicine also pays very close attention to the interior. There's this concept of what they call gross bodies, which is the corporeal body, right, in terms of what we see and what we can touch and feel. What I also find very fascinating in Ayurveda is the notion of the subtle body. And this is really looking at energy. Again, something similar to qi, where energetic bodies are really important in terms of health. And then finally, the ancient Greek medicine, which we often tie to Hippocrates, that was also translated by Galen into Latin and then later translated into Arabic. It's now referred to sometimes as Greco-Islamic medicine. And in this type of medicine, again, the interior matters. I would also say that across most indigenous communities around the world, there's a belief around medicine that attends to energy. So it's important to realize that this concept of interiority is really important, not only in the most classical systems of medicine with ancient texts that go back thousands of years, but still it lives on and is practiced with traditional healers as well as indigenous healers.
Wow.
I love to be reminded that the current medical system that we function within in this part of the world, that is not the only way to understand how our bodies work. The current judgments of what is healthy and what is not are just the latest in a long line of ways to measure what we've decided today is important to measure. It isn't the only correct way to define healthy, and it's definitely not the only way we've ever defined healthy. Now to Sarah with the same question. When we say healthy, if someone is healthy, what do we actually mean as a culture? What bar do you have to clear to be seen as healthy in our culture, do you think?
Yeah, well, it's the same as beautiful. You will never be enough because with beauty, you can look at the most objectively beautiful women in the world and you will still see tabloids and headlines tearing them apart. They'll never be good enough, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it's an unwinnable game. With health, let's say you wake up tomorrow and you've done everything you need to do to have perfected yourself. And tomorrow, you're perfect. You will still be someone who is aging, who's getting older, whose body is, over many years, we hope, going to decline. And so being perfectly healthy becomes less and less achievable the older you get. And it is always something that is so slowly slipping out of your fingers. And that doesn't need to be something that is cause for concern. That is the life cycle. You can still do a very good job at taking care of yourself and live a beautiful, comfortable life for many years. But we've basically taken this thing that is uncontrollable. In health, it's aging, our body declining, and eventually our death. In beauty, it's also aging, but it's that we can never be good enough. We've taken something that's unachievable to perfect and still put the expectation that you need to perfect it.
Yeah.
And so there is no such thing as healthy enough because unless you are completely defining that for yourself outside of anybody else's input, which is possible but hard to do, you are always measuring it by someone else's standard instead of what it has to be, which is an extremely individual experience.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about how menstrual cycles are so individual and how health is individual. But I've never thought about how beauty is individual too. There's what we're told is beautiful and the hamster wheel of trying to keep up with beauty standards. But I hadn't connected that hamster wheel of beauty is very similar to the hamster wheel of health. Always trying to keep up with what everyone tells us we have to do to be considered healthy. We're going to take a quick ad break and we'll be right back.
Cause we never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped. I'm taking my questions about body image and health to two experts. One is medical anthropologist Nancy N. Chen, professor at UC Santa Cruz. And the other is body image coach Sarah Simpson, who I've been following on Instagram for many years. My next question for our experts is about the way that we're getting our cultural messages. How fast those messages are, how visual they are, and how quickly they have been changing.
What do you see from your perspective as a medical anthropologist that social media is doing to our expectations?
I believe that in many ways, social media is really an extension of our society and cultural norms, which are constantly changing as well. There has always been this move towards creating normative bodies. And the normative body of 2026...
Wait, say more about that. What does that mean, a move towards creating normative bodies?
Social categories of norms for body shape and weight have shifted over the years. So, for instance, if we think about, say, a cultural icon like Marilyn Monroe, she was a size 12 and
and had endometriosis.
Yes, and weighed 155 pounds. Did that detract from her beauty? No, absolutely. She had achieved the social status of someone who is considered to be beautiful. And yet, if those measurements were present now, it doesn't exist in social media. So over the years, before social media, there was print media. And during that period, in the mid-20th century onwards, and even before, there were certain values about what body norms ought to look like, especially for women. And before print media, there was also visual media. So if you look at these iconic art masterpieces of bodies, particularly portraiture of women, that was also a way in which these norms were created for ideals of beauty, but also body shape, and sometimes associated with that, with weight. Our norms keep changing, and media has a huge impact, whether we're talking about print or social media.
Okay, so getting our body image and health ideals visually from the culture around us is not new. The norms and the standards always change, and they do seem to be getting more extreme. When I asked this question to Sarah, I phrased it more around health messages. I don't know, asking a body image coach who's on Instagram about social media in general felt a little too broad. I feel like the bar for being healthy has moved a lot during my lifetime in terms of what we see online, what we get told we need to do to be healthy, especially as a menstruating person. Maybe that's just as I age, I'm getting more of those messages. Maybe there's just more places to get those messages from. But do you think that bar has changed a lot in our lifetimes? Or
Yes.
is it more a function of just more places to get yelled at?
I think those go hand in hand. If I think about 5 years ago, the wealth of information that we have at our fingertips was still so large compared to our parents' generation, for example.
Right.
And it has exponentially increased since then. There's so many things that contribute to this, right? Basically, our addiction to our phones and technology. If you delete Instagram, how much of that stimulation and information would go away, right? And therefore, how much more time would you spend talking to yourself? But that's not your fault. That's just how we've evolved as a society. And yeah, because there's such a wealth of information, women are taught that we're never good enough. So we're always looking for ways to try to be good enough. So the mindset is taught to us that you should always be looking for more that you can basically add into your daily routine to be more beautiful, to be more fit, to be more healthy. And so we could so easily blame it on the individual, like, oh, just have a stronger mind, don't be so easily influenced. But that's what we're taught, and that's the culture. And there absolutely is a much higher expectation of just because you have the access to that information. But that doesn't mean that you actually have the capacity in your time and your energy and in your finances to implement it. It is a full-time job to actually do all of the things that we are told we should do. It's not realistic. The mindset is insane.
If you add on the layer of a chronic illness or a chronic condition that causes severe period pain, we are told it's kind of our fault because if you were just taking better care of yourself, if you were getting 8 hours of sleep every night, if you were working out enough but not too much, not enough to stress your body out and raise your cortisol, but enough that you have good blood flow and you're like moving your muscles and getting stronger. So you have to get that balance right. And then you have to eat anti-inflammatory or gluten-free or dairy-free or sugar-free or all three. You have to be taking, all these supplements. The amount of things that doctors will tell you, practitioners will tell you are like, oh, you have endo, you need to be doing this. Oh, you have PMOS, you need to be doing this. You need to be getting acupuncture. You need to be going to a pelvic floor physical therapist. You need to be getting massages. All this shit that's expensive as fuck. I can't do 3 of those things, let alone all of them consistently, like you have to do to see results. I don't have time in the day to do all these things. And that means when I get hit with period pain, it's my fault. Not the medical system that didn't diagnose me or treat me, not the information ecosystem that didn't give me information about my condition, but it's my fault that I didn't take good enough care of myself. And so that makes so much sense that not only is it a full-time job to make your body look an acceptable way to the culture, but then if you add a chronic illness, it's like, and also this stuff.
Yeah.
There's that hamster wheel again. So we don't want to be sick. We want to feel good. We want to feel valued and attractive and like our bodies function the way we want them to. No wonder we want to just find a solution for whatever's wrong with us and then be fixed. That's my next question.
Where does this idea, this expectation that medically one thing should fix us, where does that come from? Is that common in medicine throughout time, or is this a modern thing that we want one fix?
This is really a very contemporary, modern problem in question. And it has a lot to do with the ways in which I would say 20th century medicine has really presented itself as well as continue to persist in that health is considered to be more of a technological state of achievement, so that if the numbers are good, then one should have good health. Pain continues to be the phantom of biomedicine. In many ways, biomedicine really has not adequately addressed chronic pain.
So it is a relatively new thing, historically, that we think of our bodies as something that even can and should be fixed, like you'd fix a car. I wanted to get even more specific with Sarah. I keep coming back to the idea of fixing ourselves. There is this desire when there's that amount of pain that's happening to you over and over again, and it's mysterious and doctors aren't able to help you with it. It's kind of trial and error to see what makes it feel better for you. There's this desire to fix it, right? To find the thing that will fix it. And even outside of period pain, all of these ideas of, oh, do you have a big belly? Is it because you have SIBO? Is it because you have fibroids? Is it because you have gluten intolerance? What is the thing that will fix your body? And then once you're fixed, you're going to look correct. You're going to look the way you're supposed to, quote unquote, look. Where do you think that comes from?
On the personal level, when I get a migraine, I get a hemiplegic migraine. If people don't know what I'm talking about, it mirrors a stroke. Always on the right side of my body. I lose sight. I lose speech. I can't feel one half of my face. I have the pins and needle tingly feeling. I lose my peripheral vision and my nerve connection, essentially. So I can't walk. I can't drive. I can't talk.
Wow.
And I am a prisoner in my own body. It is terrifying. It happened when I was in public with a friend who's never had to guide me through this before, and he was amazing, but it's scary being in public and dealing with this. Every horrible migraine I have is a micro trauma, and I don't say that lightly. It is fucking terrifying. And if you're experiencing terrifying things or horrible pain, of course, there is such a strong drive in you that never wants to experience it again. But where it starts to get tricky is we exist in a society that is capitalistic. I will talk about capitalism all day, and I'm not even super anti-capitalist. It's just that you can't have these conversations without it. You have to understand that system, essentially large corporations, is going to look at the consumer market, which is you and I, and say, what are they struggling with, and how can I invent a product or a solution to that? And so they are looking at us struggling with this, and they are inventing something that's going to make us buy something from them. And one of the things they've invented is this idea, number one, that you are something broken that needs to be fixed. And number two, again, that there must be one explanation. The reason it has to be one explanation in the capitalistic system is because, let's say the problem is, we'll use the easy example of not having a flat stomach. A gym doesn't want to sell you the idea that it's a little bit of exercise and a little bit of inflammation and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It makes it a lot harder than it would be to say, your number one only problem is that you don't work out enough and our gym has the classes you need in order to fix it. Which one's going to put money in their pocket, right? And so it becomes this super polarized individual idea of there must be one thing that will fix you. But then you have a million of these people shouting in your face, it's this, it's that, that you feel pulled in a million different directions. And because you can't find the truth, you blame yourself.
Wow. My mind is a little blown by this walkthrough of how capitalism has overlaid our sense of how to take care of ourselves and just replaced it with this desire to be fixed. I feel like I understand now, a little bit at least, the different forces that are at play here. All those forces that worked together to plant that expectation in my head that after surgery fixed the cause of my death cramps, I would then automatically be skinnier. Okay, so going forward, how do I keep those sneaky forces of patriarchal culture and capitalism from planting more thoughts in my head without my knowledge or permission? Let's ask Nancy Chen.
One of the things that I've learned in anthropology, but specifically within medical anthropology, is how to turn the gaze upwards, right? How to think about something systemically rather than to just think about individual bodies. It's important to understand from an individual, right? It's about how one as an adolescent or as a young adult might internalize these ideals, what we do in medical anthropology is to really think about how can we reframe the problem to understand that there are systems in place that in many ways create these norms that shape how we come to view ourselves in very vulnerable stages of one's life, right? Especially for adolescent individuals or teens or young adults. This is a very formative period in terms of when selfhood gets shaped, and it's happening not just faster, but much earlier too, right? We're talking about pre-adolescence. We're talking about children who are also greatly influenced by this. One of the things I love about anthropology is the fact that there is incredible diversity, not just of cultures and cultural knowledge. There is also incredible diversity of bodies, of body shapes, of body types, of bodily expressions, and language in terms of how we describe ourselves, how we describe each other. So I would say, if anything I would like to share is just to learn and think about and study as many cultures and societies as one can, because that's another way to not only gain acceptance of differences and diversity, but also acceptance of oneself and one's own body, especially as one changes over time. An important thing to remember, one's 14-year-old body is not going to be the same at 34 or at 74. Enjoy the body that you have when you can. Pay attention to pain. It's a real thing. It's not something that's in one's head. Pay attention and get support where possible. There's incredible communities of care that it's possible to find support when you need it.
I love the idea of tackling this cultural expectation by punching up. That if you make sure you can see the cultural values around you, that they're visible to you, they won't be acting invisibly on you. And it is a very anthropologist answer, to defend yourself from body image expectations by studying other cultures. But I do see how it would work. Now, what advice does Sarah have for us? For those of us who are on board with and have been doing a lot of work reframing our body images, especially around chronic health conditions, we don't want to have these ideas about our body. We don't want to have these expectations that we're going to have flat stomachs or be extremely thin to be healthy. But there's still that, phantom limb. There's that part of our brain that is just still in it, that is still holding on to these messages we've gathered our whole lives. And they show up in these weird places, and they show up unexpectedly and in our subconscious. How do you think we can move away from that, or at least recognize when it's happening a little bit better?
When we struggle with anything, eating disorders, chronic pain conditions, chronic health conditions are great examples. It does become a huge part of our identity. And so there's a big part of our identity that we have to reckon with, where we have to accept that part of ourselves. And part of the journey of accepting I am someone who might never be perfectly well or perfectly healthy, and it might affect how my body looks, it does require us to embody that identity a little bit, of find a little bit of acceptance or pride in it. And at the same time, we have to remember that we are not just a chart, a medical case that needs to be solved. We are also, at the same time, the duality, someone who is affected by diet culture, just like anybody else. There's this idea that I hear from the outside looking in when I talk to people about being chronically ill. They seem flabbergasted because they're like, what do you mean your clients who are chronically ill still struggle with their body image? Don't they have bigger problems? I actually got a comment on an Instagram once that was like, poor people don't struggle with eating disorders because they don't have time to think about this. Having an eating disorder is a rich person problem. And I've heard the same about chronic illnesses as well. And this is just not how it works. It's not a hierarchy of problems where I'm in so much pain right now that I don't give a fuck what I look like because I have bigger problems. It's like, no, I am in so much pain right now. I already didn't love what my body looked like. And now I'm hating my body on a whole other level because I'm angry at it for making me feel so much pain.
Right. It's cumulative.
Yeah. And it is understanding that our identity is not made up of one identity or one thing, and that it's also always changing. Understanding the bigger picture of who you are and being proud of a lot of different parts of you, even if you don't love all of the parts, whether that's the pain your body puts you in or what your body looks like. If you can be proud or at least content with some of the other pieces, and I know that probably sounds a bit cliche, but that is one of the things that allows us to remember this isn't everything I am. What I look like isn't everything I am. And me not being perfectly healthy like I feel pressured to be, that's not everything I am either.
I love that. And it resonates really strongly with me. I did not want to be a person with a chronic illness. And that I think slowed down pursuing a diagnosis, partly because I was like, I don't actually want to be sick with something that has no cure and that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. That sucks. And it took an extra few years of being in pain to be like, no, I want to know. I want to get this treated. That anger you have at your body for being sick does completely compound with like, my body is sick and it doesn't look the way that I want it to look. Those two things on top of each other are hard. Even since my surgery, I need to avoid looking in the mirror the 2 days before my period and while I'm on my period, because no matter what I look like, no matter how bloated I get or not bloated I get, whatever I see, I'm going to be unhappy with. It doesn't matter what it actually looks like. And I'm not actually seeing accurately at that time. I just need to know whatever thoughts go through my head about my body in those 5 days to disregard them. Whatever part of my brain thinks that goes absolutely haywire during this time and is 10 toes down in all the things that I know are not true the rest of the time. But it's hard. It's hard to stay aware of that. It's hard not to get sucked into that vortex. So that makes total sense.
I think to answer part of your question of like, how do we stay aware of that? You need more people outside of your own mind. And not just people that you interview on a podcast and you feel really seen right now, but you need friends in your life who you can regularly be honest about this with, like-minded, open-minded, non-judgmental community that you do not have to over-explain yourself to because you are already exhausted over-explaining yourself to the people who don't get you. And I realized this in my own life when I found my people that I didn't know existed, that I always thought I was just going to be alone in my feelings and in my experiences. I found my people, and they're not necessarily the ones that have had the exact same experiences, but they are the ones who make me feel like my experiences can take up space and I don't have to over-explain myself. And that unlocked a level of not just soul healing, but physical ailment healing, because I suddenly had people that I could ask to come over my house and help me when I was debilitated by a migraine. People I could cry to instead of keeping it all inside after a really bad migraine. And same with the body image stuff. If you're in a position like you are describing to me now, the next step is community. You have to have community. You do.
Community has come up over and over again in both of these conversations, which is not what I expected. I guess if culture with a capital C is sending us messages about health and body image that are kind of fucking us up, then we need to surround ourselves and buffer ourselves with another different culture, maybe culture with a lowercase c. A culture that doesn't see you as just a customer that needs to be guilted or shamed into buying something to fix yourself. A little culture that supports and celebrates you where you can support and celebrate people too. We know that having a place to talk openly about period pain actually lessens the pain we feel, because we evolved to be a social, interdependent species. It really sucks that the culture we live inside of, that we're swimming in every day, has co-opted that social, interdependent evolution into something that makes us feel bad for money. Maybe those same people we talk to about our period pain are the same people we can talk to about these sneaky expectations that we find at the bottom of a pile of bad feelings about our bodies. If you don't have a community to talk to about these things yet, may I humbly offer up the CRAMPED Discord. You can always start there. Here's where you can find our guests from today. You can watch Nancy and Chen's TED Talk online. I will put the link in the show notes. When I asked her where people could find her if they wanted to connect with her, she suggested,
I'm here at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Come take a class with me anytime.
Sarah Simpson, as you might expect, is very findable online.
I am Sarah in yellow on all social medias. So SARAHIN, yellow, like the color. On my website, which is linked on all of my social medias, you will find the most updated information about online coaching groups I have. They are open to time zones all over the world. I do online workshops sometimes as well. I always ask people on podcasts, like, send me a message that you listen to this podcast and then you found me on socials. Like, please say hi if you're someone listening to this who is going to go look me up on Instagram right now.
That's it for this week's Cramped. Was this episode helpful for you? Is this podcast bringing value to your life and helping you navigate diagnosis, treatment, and self-care for your period pain? If the answer is yes, please help me continue making this show by joining the Patreon. Even joining at the free level helps me prove that this is valuable to people. And if you can toss me $5 or $10 or $25 a month, you will literally be paying my currently very small paycheck. If you have something to say about body image and health and the unreasonable expectations that we're hanging on our healing, hop on the Cramped Discord, which you can do by joining the Patreon at any level, or you can email me at crampedpodcast@gmail.com. All right, Crampers, see you next time.
What's happening to your body? We don't know because we've never really studied the female body.